Ever since you can remember, you felt something in your chest telling you to move, to love, to speak, to try. Day after day, you pretend you don't hear it calling, or maybe you dismiss it as silliness or worse. But it's there, ready for you, and it will wait for you as long as you need. My name is Johnny G, and I invite you to join me on a journey of awakening as we dare to embrace our light. This is Refractive. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Refractive Podcast. Today, I have a good friend of mine joining us to talk about a topic that's near and dear to both of our hearts. I am pleased to introduce you to Phil Reese. He's the host of the Whole Phil podcast. He is also a DJ and a web developer based out of Washington, D.C. How are you doing today, Phil?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Good. I'm so happy that you're on Refractive. It's going to be some really nice quality content today.
Awesome. I'm excited too.
Yes. And when you and I were planning the episode, we decided to talk about something that's near and dear to both of our hearts. It is the process of being in recovery and the wisdom that people in recovery are given by the literature and the traditions, and by working the 12 steps. And so many times, because my listeners know I'm in recovery, and now they know you're in recovery, so many times I've said to other people in recovery, boy, I just wish everyone had access to some of the tools and wisdom that we have access to, because it's truly life-changing.
Absolutely. I completely agree. For most of my life, I kind of felt like everybody else in the world had like this owner's manual for life, and I didn't get one. And I kind of got that owner's manual for life once I started doing 12-step recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you say we just jump right in?
Let's do it.
All right. So you and I kind of brainstorm a list of some of the nuggets of wisdom that have been most useful to us. And on the top of the list, it's about surrendering. And people who are listeners of Refractive podcasts, and also people who've enjoyed the spiritual aspects of your podcast, I'm sure that they're not going to be surprised by the concept of surrendering. And we call it in recovery, living life on life's terms. So what has your experience with that philosophy of life on life's terms? How has that impacted you?
Oh my God. Well, it's not something that's ever come natural to me. It's something I have to work on every single day. But when I do, the benefits are amazing. Let me tell you a quick story. I'm kind of a panicker. When things go wrong, when things don't go as planned, my head goes to catastrophe. A couple months ago, because my day job is working for a university and we do graduations, and I'm kind of in charge of recording those sort of things and publishing and promoting the recordings of those things. We were doing our very first Zoom graduations last May, and things were going really well. I was really surprised at how well they were going. And then, so we had to break up graduation to like 5 or 6 ceremonies. At like ceremony 5, 15 minutes beforehand, my power goes out. The whole neighborhood's power goes out, right? Mm. And I'm supposed to be the one recording it, like, and so like old Phil would have totally panicked. If I didn't reach a solution quickly, which you really can't reach a solution very quickly when you're panicking, I would have just gotten frustrated, given up, probably started drinking. and I didn't do any of that. At this point in May, my meditation practice had been pretty solid for a while. And I so I kind of the power went out, and it's not like I was like, "Oh, great, glad." But I was able to keep calm and serene
Hmm.
and accept my power's out.
Yeah.
What now? We didn't plan for this, but what can I do?
Yeah.
Um, and I immediately contacted the president of the university, let her know what was going on, and contacted my immediate supervisor and said, "Here's how you could record this ceremony for me, and then send it to me afterwards." Um, and uh, and so he did. He got it recorded, and it was fine. My power was restored within an hour. So by the next ceremony, I was back to normal.
Yeah.
But that's the sort of thing I would have just hit the wall over before. And
Yeah.
so it's really important to be mindful of practicing this all the time,
Yeah.
because it gets rusty real fast. And because I was in a mindset already, because I'd been really working my meditation practice, and I'd been working the 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 philosophies and the program to keep this front and center in my mind, I was able to accept it, surrender to the reality that I
Yeah.
had no control over,
Yes.
and then change my actions. The only thing I have control over are my
Yeah.
actions, thoughts, and judgments. Change my actions accordingly, and it went fine.
Hmm. Yeah. You know, I was raised in a way that led to me believing that I needed to be the master of my universe. And it wasn't just He-Man that taught me that, right? Like it was everything. It was, if I don't take control, things will hurt me. And I even have been, let's say, called out several times by friends for even approaching dating relationships in the same way I would approach a work problem. I would say, well, what do you do if you're having issue with someone you're dating? I would analyze the variables. I would remove the variables that aren't necessary. And then I would deal with the problems individually in priority. And someone's like, wow, you can't approach a romantic relationship like that. Like, they're not your employee. You can't just fix problem A, then problem B, dismiss problem C. And I was like, of course I can. That's how you're effective in life. And this was the way that I lived. And it's a painful way to live, which is counterintuitive. It feels like that's an organized, effective, smart way to live. But the fact is, there's so little that we have control over that when we hang our entire day on being able to do A, B, and specifically C, and they don't happen, it hurts, right? So the concept of life on life's terms, as I've learned it through recovery, is that there's literally nothing you can control but yourself. All you can do is show up and moment by moment analyze what's the next best thing for you to do. We call it, right, the next right action. What's the next right action I can take in this time? And it seems so basic now that I say it, but it was revolutionary for me. How about you? Like, did it feel like a major shift in how you approach your life?
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, I was a catastrophizer. And like you, I was raised, that I had to figure everything out. I had to be very independent. Um, and I was the master of my own destiny. And
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
and if something went wrong, it was my fault, and I had to fix it. Um, and I can do a lot of damage to my life even now, even though I've changed quite a bit. But I do accept that so much is out of my control.
Yeah.
and that's okay.
Yeah.
And because all that same stuff is out of everyone's control. They're just fooling themselves into thinking
Yes.
that it is in their
That's the
control.
point. That's the point.
And when you fool yourself when you delude yourself that way, like you said, it's a miserable way to live. It
Yes.
is, you can't possibly be happy if your happiness hinges on you getting and things going according to your plans,
Yes.
and things going your way, because it's just not going to happen.
Yes.
And even if it happens for a little bit, it's unsustainable.
Hmm. And this is the key of the concept of surrendering that we focus on so heavily in recovery. And I'm telling you, for my listeners, like, the concept of surrendering to what is will change your life, because it's the paradox that we don't have power. Any, like you said, anything we think we can do uh to cause a particular impact in our day, our life, the world, another person, that's all illusion. And when you just surrender to the fact that I I'm not God. I can't make things happen. I can show up with my intentions and let go of the results. This is how you get power. You get power by not fighting, you know? It's my
Yes,
favorite.
absolutely. Yeah.
So let's move on to the next topic that we have, which is designing a higher power or a god or whatever type of being that feels right to you. Designing one that works for you. Can you explain what it means to design a higher power according to what works for you?
Absolutely. Um, I mean, it might sound sacrilegious to some people to design your own higher
Right.
power. But what it's about for me is, um, again, we're looking at reality like we were with accepting life on life's terms. We're looking at what is really going on, what is real to us, um, and um, and what is possible, and so um, we're looking at our realities. I'm looking at my reality, and my higher power has to make sense in my reality, or else I'm not going to be able to turn to my higher power. Um, I have to be able to believe in it, and so designing my higher power uh, has been I mean, it's been a lifelong effort for me. I've always been a spiritual seeker. I was raised Roman Catholic, but I have not been Roman Catholic for a long, long time. But for me, it's really important that my higher power um, be able to inspire me
Yeah.
to do what is right.
Hmm.
In those moments that I have to accept life on life's terms, I have to make choices in those moments.
Right.
And I need my higher power to inspire me to make the right one. Um, and my higher power has to look out for me.
Yeah.
And so that's that's really all I really need to know about my higher power.
Yeah.
Beyond that, nothing's really knowable.
Hmm.
If you have some sort of a spiritual higher power, but you can even have. I talked to a lot of agnostics and atheists um, in recovery, and you know, your higher power doesn't have to be like a, a, a dude in the sky.
Right.
It just
Hmm.
needs to be. Um, you need to accept that there are things bigger than you,
Yes.
and that is where you can start with a higher power. There are
Right.
things bigger than me. There are things more powerful than me. Some are good, some are bad. So I need to focus on those things bigger than me that are good for me, that are good for my community. And that's where my higher power, I can begin designing my higher power.
Yeah.
And that really helped me early on in sobriety.
Yeah. Absolutely. And uh, so I want to kind of break this up into two parts. The first part, talking to listeners who might be atheist or agnostic. What does it mean to have a higher power if it's not a sentient being? If it's not a God, then what is a higher power? And, what I would offer is that, uh, in the 12 steps, and this is the wisdom that you and I are excited to share with the listeners. In the 12 steps, if it doesn't matter if someone has a God or not. Like you said, it matters that it needs to be something bigger than them. And so a lot of people use a group of trusted friends. And that while one other person isn't really an ideal higher power, if you were to go to two or three people for help or advice and pick the middle of all of their advice, you're going to be taken care of, right? Because having that group balances out everybody's crazy, everybody's baggage, and it allows you to pick the most loving, sensible response to anything that's happening. So a higher power could simply be the wisdom of three people, which is greater than the wisdom of one person. And so for those of you who might be agnostic or atheist, when we say design a higher power, what we mean is have a framework for this kind of support that works for you, that feels loving and genuine for you. For some people, higher power could be, it could even be scripture for Christians, right? Go into the Bible and find the guidance that's there for you. That might not work for me, but it's something that is a source of guidance and support and help that feels right. Now, for the people who believe in a deity, a sentient being, like myself, my listeners know I don't qualify as Christian, but I do believe in a God. Um, the purpose of designing a higher power is that if you believe your higher power disapproves of you, if you believe your higher power is coming after you, then how on earth can you invite that system of support in to help you? Now, the logic of this is that if you believe that God is everything, if you believe that God is all, then that means God is approval and disapproval. God is good. God also contains the evil, right? God is everything. And therefore, since we can't know all about God, like you just said, we can't know everything that God is, why not wrap our heads around the parts of God that we can understand? Some people envision a God that's like a loving parent. Some people envision a God that's like a sibling, um, a, a, a person that will behave in a way that feels supportive. And so I wonder if you have anything else to add to that.
I think that is absolutely 100% right on. And I think that if even if you do come from a more rigid faith tradition, like I came from Catholicism, if I were still Catholic, I don't think there would be any tension between um, the concept of designing my higher power and what I was raised with, even though what I was raised with doesn't work for me. If I were still with that, I think it still work because every major religion believes that the higher power of that religion, of that spiritual system, is too great to be comprehended, no
Right.
matter what. And
Yes.
even if you believe in no religion, there's still, I recently read Astrophysics for People in a Hurry by Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Okay. Yeah.
And even the physical laws of the universe are too great for certainly any one person to understand, but even our scientists don't understand everything totally. We still
Mhm.
don't really know how gravity works. We're getting
Yeah.
a better idea all the time since we discovered gravity waves. That was great, but
Mhm.
we're still kind of confused about how gravity works. And when we get into those big star systems, we don't know how it works. So there are rules and laws in the universe that you're not going to understand, and that's okay. Focus on what you can understand, and that is what seems right and wrong for you. For me, right and wrong has to do with how I interact with the community around me, how I am bringing value to other people and helping other people. That's right. When I take and exploit from other people, that's wrong. Um, and that's all again, that's really all need to know.
Yeah.
And I start there and I make my decisions that way. And like you beautifully said, having a group of people to consult that have similar beliefs about how to move within this world has been so helpful for me. When
Yeah.
I was not a person who asked for help ever
Mhm.
before getting sober. Getting sober was kind of the first time I ever asked for help in a long, long time.
Right.
And I now, when I am feeling stuff, when I'm perplexed over stuff, this is stuff I used to just fester on, just
Oh,
bury.
yeah.
Now I reach out.
Mhm.
When something's bothering me, I reach out and I talk to people I trust and try and get some insight from them. And that's how I talk to my higher power.
Yes, I think that's perfect because we didn't set it up. I didn't set it up this way at the beginning of the episode, but everyone who's listening here knows someone touched by addiction, knows someone who's touched by compulsion, and what we're saying is if these tools and if these concepts are powerful enough to pull us back from the jaws of addiction, then these things also work when you have a conflict with someone at work. They also work when your mother pushes your buttons. And they also work when you can't have what you want out of life. Like they work for the big traumas and they work for the little stuff too. And that's why I felt this was such a valuable episode, because there are people who just don't know this stuff. Ironically, people who are on a path of spiritual awakening often find this same information because these concepts are universal among spiritual teachers. You find a lot of these concepts if you dig under the surface, even in Catholicism, that back
Yes.
in the day when these things were being accepted by the masses, these are the ideas that rituals were built upon, these
Yes.
same concepts. And I do want to say, though, you talked about how the forces of physics and are greater than a person, but when Bath and Body Works has buy one get one free candles, I can bend space time, and I I just need you to know I'm getting my candles. So I want to have that caveat. So let's
And
keep
that is a
going.
great point. That's a great point about all these spiritual traditions kind
Yeah.
of having that same thing. I read a lot of Taoism, the Tao Te Ching, and Xuanzang, and I read a lot of Stoicism. And these concepts about the higher power and accepting life on life's terms are prominent concepts in those two traditions as well. And they're from very different times and very different places. So it is
Yeah.
very universal.
So let's talk about shame. Shame is the reason why so many of us turn to compulsions. And it deepened our reliance on these various substances, whether it's food or drugs or alcohol, to numb and muffle the shame we felt. And so we've said that uh, shame lives in darkness, and that when we take the lid off the shame box and we let light shine on it, it loses its power. And I know that there is an expression that we use in the rooms about shame and the burden of it. And why don't you share with us how that goes?
Sure. Well, right, just very along these lines, one of my favorite expressions um, is a burden shared is cut in half, and joy shared is doubled.
Yes.
And that also ties into our former topic about, you know, about having a higher power and having a group. That's how I use my higher power in my groups of trusted people. Like I said, I go to them with a burden, and I find it's really true. And the again, prior to this sort of journey I'm on now, uh, I was an island, right? I would walk alone. Whatever was happening to me, I would either hold inside bitterly, or I would lash out and act out over it. Neither very healthy at all. Um, so instead of doing a tweet storm of anger, or sitting around moping in bed, or punching my wall, again, I reach out and I share, and this goes for shame, and this goes for things that I am um, hurt by.
Yes.
This goes for things I'm disappointed in. This goes for things that perplex me. When all any of those burdens, when I share them, then they are less scary. That I saw someone share on Instagram today about something about psychotherapy that was really poignant. That a therapist doesn't, and a lot of my friends aren't like trained therapists, but they do some of that same work for me. A therapist doesn't um, kill the monsters. The therapist invites them into the room so that you can see that they have no teeth, they got nothing in their hands, and they're scared and weak.
Yeah.
Um, and invites them into the room so you can face them. And
Yes.
that's what sharing a burden does. You can see it for what it is when you're sharing this burden, when you're sharing the shame with someone, something you're very ashamed of, or something that's really just bothering you because you can't figure it out. Um, it loses its teeth. It
Yes.
loses its teeth so fast. And the more you do it, the easier it gets and the more effective that gets.
Yes. Yes. And you don't need to take our word for it. Again, you can go to any religious practice from Catholicism to Judaism. They all have processes where you look at what is weighing you down and you share it with someone, right? You either go get absolution for a priest or you have your family ritual in Judaism. And the point is that if you don't get it off your chest, you begin to withdraw. You begin to live in fear. You begin to live in isolation because you don't want people to know. And the fact is, like you said, with that whole monster scenario and the therapist, it's like the thought and the belief of what we're holding is so much more harmful than what is really there, right? The power is in the thought and the energy we give to it rather than what it actually is. And I mean, why do you think therapy works, right? Why do people pay for therapy? Because they need to go get stuff off their chest. They need to explain what's weighing them down. And yeah, and we do that in recovery very often. That's what we share about in meetings, right? Like when we talk with other members of a fellowship, we share that stuff so that it doesn't weigh us down and push us back into our compulsions. Again, that's why it works on the small stuff too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's talk. This kind of dovetails with the concept of shame. It touches on the concept of reaching out to other people. If you compare, you despair. So tell us what that is all about.
Oh God, that's another great phrase that I use all the time. And I brought up Instagram in the last answer. Talk about the place where you can compare and despair more
Don't
than
even look at Kendall Jenner's
I.
Instagram, okay?
Oh man, like people are curating on social media. People are curating their lives to put forward to maintain an image that they want. And even outside of social media, that people, you don't see all the warts, people put makeup over it. So when we are comparing ourselves to others, we're comparing ourselves to the image that they want us to see, or the image that they've put forward. So it's not useful. Again, goes back to that delusional mindset that we want to get away from. It's delusional to think that anyone's life is as perfect as it seems
Yes.
from what you're allowed to see. So when you compare and you say, "I wish I had," uh, you know, that kind of success. I wish I had the boat. I wish I had the house. I wish I had the husband. I wish I had the little corgi, and all the vacations. You're not seeing the whole picture, and there are probably some dark things that go along with all that stuff that you don't have to experience.
Yes.
It's best to just focus on yourself.
Yes.
Don't compare your successes and failures to what other people are putting out there. Um, it's just not a complete and whole picture, and so therefore, it's not a wise comparison to make. Are you happy? That's what that do. Are you grateful for what you have? Are you, are I have this cat that's sitting right here at my feet. It's adorable, and it's the sweetest thing in the world. And I remind myself all the time how grateful I am that I have these two cats that love me so much.
Yes.
And that's a wonderful thing, and not everyone can have that, you know. So, are you living in gratitude for what
Yes.
you have? Are you, appreciating? Again, both the Stoics and the Taoists and the Buddhists all preach this. Being grateful for what you have. You never know when it can be taken from you, and not trying to leap over the next hill,
Yes. Yeah.
uh, trying to get the next thing, not waiting and appreciating what you've already attained, forgetting about it, ignoring it, and worrying about the next thing. It's
Yes.
not healthy and it doesn't work.
No. And I mean, if you want to take this to a really practical level, the last episode was on, or 2 episodes ago, was about accepting the expectations of others as your own. And so here's what happens to us, right? As kids and adolescents, we learn um, a blueprint for life that is really great for some people, and we extrapolate on that it is the only way to achieve a quality life. And you know, the reason that meditation is so powerful is because it gives you a chance to go inside and learn about yourself. To thine own self be true. And the fact is it necessary to get your 2 year old into that elite pre K? Is it necessary? Like, can you know that you are hurting your kid's chances by not doing that? Like, can you really know that? Is that what you really want, or is that what you have absorbed as necessary according to a standard that doesn't even belong or fit you? And do I need to be a vice president of such and such area of business to have a reasonable life? Maybe so. For some people, that is a fulfilling, exciting part of their life. But for me, so many of us have pursued careers that would allow me to fall into someone else's mold. And it wasn't until I got knocked down and someone held my hand and helped me look inside to realize I don't want that. And I didn't even know I didn't want it. If you would have asked me if I wanted it, I would have said yes, and I would have believed it 100%. But the fact is that I want, I didn't really want what all these other people had. It just seemed like the winning combination, and by looking inside, I was able to sort through that fog. And so when we say don't compare, that sounds ridiculous. It sounds impractical not to compare ourselves to others. We see things on the street and we want them, right? But do yourself the favor of knowing yourself, of taking time to go inside and saying, do I want this because it's going to make me feel right? Or do I want this because I love myself and there's going to be an experience of joy and it's going to really enrich the joy in my life? Those are not the same thing always.
Exactly. And I'm really glad you brought up careers. I had a conversation with a friend in my circle of experts the other day about ambition. And,
Yeah.
ambition isn't necessarily a bad thing. Ambition is good.
No,
Ambition got me where I'm at today. But there were times where I was ambitious and miserable because I was pursuing things that I didn't necessarily really want or
that's right.
really weren't for me because I thought that that was what I was supposed to do.
Yes.
I need to be ambitious and I will find happiness if I'm ambitious for those things that are a good fit for me, that are attainable, that I'm ready for, that I've done the hard work on myself for, um, that I've prepared for, and are in my wheelhouse.
They're in
And
harmony with your values.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. All right. I love this. I think it's just so rich. I think it's so powerful because I didn't know what I didn't know. And, you know, if I share with the listeners kind of the alcoholic or the recovery prospect of this, there's so many reasons to go back into our compulsive behaviors. And listen, your problem might not be with a substance. You might be a workaholic, right? Where you work way harder than is necessary because you need to muffle some other area of your life. You need to numb out some other area of your life. It works just as well with cake. It works just as well with beer. It works just as well with drugs. I promise you. But the fact is, uh, know what matters to you. Know your values. And when I work with clients, that's usually one of the first things that happens. Someone walks in and says, I don't know why my life feels so blah. Like, why does my life feel so like it's on um, autopilot? And often it's because you have built a universe that doesn't belong to you. It was never meant for you, it was never yours. you know there is a world that will light your soul on fire. You just have to open your eyes and get quiet. So Phil, we're running close to our time limit, but I do want to quickly go over one more. And so I'm just going to let you talk on it and I'm going to keep my mouth shut on it. And this is about keeping your side of the street clean. So can you give the listeners just an overview of what it means to keep your side of the street clean?
Absolutely. This is kind of the mirror image to what we just talked about, which is when you compare, you just despair. Keeping your side of the street clean, it really another way to look at it is That old saying, "People in glass houses," or for the Christians in the audience, John 8:7. Let anyone let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw the stone.
Everybody,
Um,
Phil Reese is serving gospel realness on Refractive Podcast.
it's you know, uh, again, it goes down to look at yourself first. A lot of these really get down to focus inward instead of outward. So much of my life used to be focusing outward, trying to fix things outside of me, trying to be like people that I was never going to be like.
But Phil, everyone else is messed up. People are constantly getting in your way. People are constantly hurting you, hurting your feelings, cutting you off in traffic, flaking off, not showing up for commitments. Like other people are messed up. So why is it that it's useful to focus on my side of the street when there's so many other people who are dragging me down with their hot messes?
Absolutely. And those people are still going to be hot messes whether or not I focus on them. If my focus is on other people's problems, other people's flaws, I'm not going to get peace and serenity. I'm not going to find my joy. That happiness, that fulfillment comes from inside of me. And so it doesn't matter if someone else is cutting me off in traffic. It what matters is, have I made my gratitude list for the day? Have I pet my cats? Have I eaten a good meal? When I bring that focus back inward, and stop focusing on all the flaws I see on other people, I stop noticing their flaws as much. Their flaws don't bother me as much, and I can keep um, improving my life instead of trying to fix other people.
Mhm.
Um, because there's lots to fix in my life.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of work to do. I really don't have time to fix anyone else's life.
Yes, that's right. Exactly. Man, this has been so great. I really love this. Let me just recap the main nuggets of wisdom that we dug into today. We talked about surrendering, which is living life on life's terms rather than the life that we try to architect, as if we could possibly architect anything. The next was design a higher power that works for you, right? Think about what you need from a higher power, whether it is a sentient being or whether it is not, and have that framework ready in your mind so that when the mess hits the fan, you have something to fall back on and rely on for support. A burden shared is halved, and shame lives in darkness. So this was the third point that we talked about today. And there's a reason that it feels good to talk to a friend when something is going wrong. Do more of that. Don't just save it for the hard stuff. At the end of a day, if a coworker gave you a nasty side eye, it's okay to talk to someone and say, I don't know why she did that. It really upsets me. Well, because maybe there's something you can do about it internally instead of focusing externally on that. We talked about when you compare, you despair, and that in reality, as long as you know yourself, as long as you know what matters to you, as long as you understand um, your values, it doesn't matter what other people are doing. And it only hurts us when we drown out the voice of guidance inside of us to adopt the voice of guidance of someone else. That is painful. And then the last one we talked about was keeping your side of the street clean. You know what? I apologize when I do something wrong. I focus on doing the things that are good and healthy for me. And if someone hurts my feelings, takes advantage of me, or behaves in a way that's not fair, I let them and karma handle them. I don't need to worry about that. I just say I'm sorry for what I've done, and that's it. So, all right, Phil, how can listeners encounter you and your podcast and all of the goodness that comes out of the whole Phil?
Well, my podcast is called The Whole Phil Podcast, and you can find it on any podcatcher. Just all the major ones, at least. Apple and Google and iHeart and Castbox, Stitcher. Just search for Whole WHOLE Phil PHIL, the Whole Phil Podcast, and it should come up as the top result or one of the first results. Please subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. You can also find my website at philipjreese.com. That's Philip with 2 L's. And you can find me on Twitter at really Phil Reese. You can find me on all these evil social medias. Facebook, I'm Phil Reese the DJ.
Mm-hmm.
And Instagram, I am Philip J. Reese. And I'm also Philip J. Reese on Twitch, where I DJ live on Tuesday and Thursday nights for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
From 7:10 to 7:55 Eastern Time,
Yes.
PM, Club 45. And that's where you can find me.
So wait, can you say can you tell people how they can find you on DJ? You said Twitch.
Yeah. Twitch.tv/Philip J. Reese.
Okay, there you go. Perfect. All right, everybody. I want to thank you so much for joining us on Refractive Podcast today. I want to give my love and gratitude to Phil for coming on to the show today. And as you go about your day and people are stepping on your toes and slamming your door, just remember to be good to other people and aim your light. Take care. You have been listening to Refractive Podcast, and this is Johnny G. If you've enjoyed today's episode, do me a favor, give it a share on social media, or if you're in the podcast app, give it a rating. If you're on YouTube, click like. It really does make a difference in the search results. I am a speaker, coach, and facilitator based in Washington, D.C., but I work in person and remotely with people who are ready to step with clarity into their most authentic life. If I can be of service, reach out to me, Johnny, JOHNNY, at refractivecoaching.com. Have an amazing day. Be good to each other. And always remember, aim your light.